In this video, we are continuing the amazing series that I get very excited about, where we talk about the common slides that you can use to make your lives easier as PD facilitators, as helping teachers to do these things well and without a lot of expenditure of time. Today, we're talking specifically about reading comprehension and reading tips. This I typically would use just to model with adults, and I would recommend that adults are really just seeing it and experiencing it so that they can use it with their students. But I honestly think it helps in all ways that you use it. So I'm going to walk through them and just be thinking about kind of the two hats that you may be wearing, one being a facilitator of learning and one being kind of with the end goal of having students using it. So an educator who's directly working with youth. All right, here we go. Oh, as always, before we get into this, we are going to have the link for you in the description below so that you can get the slides that we're going to walk through in just a moment, and you can use them, personalize them, all the things. Okay, now that I'm screen sharing, I'm realizing I want to say is that text is in quotes because you can use this with any text. You can use it with artwork. You can use it with a mathematical word problem. I just want to make sure that people don't think this is just for a reading passage. This can be for anything, a whole kind of category of resource things, exploring a museum, looking at a journal article for science, whatever it is. So text and quotes. I'm going to keep this simple because I think sometimes we try to do too many things specifically for reading comprehension, and there are many things we can do, but let's focus on the things that work and let's do them consistently. So this is the first one. I like to use this slide to cue participants or students to think about stopping after each paragraph or section. And you can designate this, or you could have students or participants decide how often they would like to stop. What I would actually do as a kind of a gradual release of the scaffold is I would put a little box in after each section that I wanted students to stop and jot, and I would write stop and jot. And I might even write a prompt like, what's the main idea of the text you just read? And then kind of gradually release. Then I might tell them stop and jot here and add a little note in the text itself for them, or I might just kind of direct them from the front of the class, and then eventually they're figuring out when they're stopping and jotting. So something super simple like this, a stop sign and kind of a place where you see writing utensil and a piece of paper is just going to visually cue them that remember to stop and jot, and so you have this up while they're reading. Super simple. The next thing is notice and wonder. You know what? Let me go back here. The reason for this, and it may be obvious to you, but I think one of the things I wanted to name, the reason for this one is because when we don't stop and we just have students read all the way through, I have literally sat with students who are like, I don't even know what I just read. I, as an adult, have been like, I just read 2 pages. I don't know. I can't answer the comprehension questions because that was referring to paragraph 1 and that was a long time ago. So stop and jot, definitely helpful. Okay, notice and wonder. Super simple once again. So you could use adaptations of this, see, think, wonder. I'm trying not to use ableist language. I really like notice and wonder, although you can come up with whatever cues you would like for that. I like these. They're super simple. They're punctuation that students are going to learn anyway. The exclamation kind of connotes this idea of like surprise or alarm or concern or something. And you could kind of norm or talk to students about like what it means, but you could literally notice anything, just something that stands out to you. So that's kind of like the notice. And then the question, right? This is a literal question they are asking. They are saying, here's what I notice in the text. And again, if it's a visual, they're saying, I see this color or this shape or this texture or whatever it is. It might be, I noticed this word, or I noticed the author's name, and here's what I infer about the year it was written, or whatever. And then the question is literally any wondering. I think it's also really appropriate to norm and helpful to norm with students that a question, there's no like best type of question. All questions are welcome, and all questions are showing a degree of engagement that you want as the facilitator of learning, right? So again, super simple. You can add this in like 3 times a lesson. Awesome, right? Or again, as a facilitator, 3 times a facilitator. And then the final one I want to share with you is jigsaw. So if there's a really large text or it's really complex, you might want to chunk it up and have students take a part of it. Now, ways you can do this. You can do it by group. I know jigsaw is a very common protocol, so you may know this. You can do it by group and have each group member do something. I also like the idea of having each group, especially if it's a complex text, work together. And then if you have, let's say, 5 groups and 5 sections of a quote unquote text, then each group is working on one section, but they still get to be collaborative. So here's what I use typically when I usually will put a quote unquote text as a separate slide deck when I'm facilitating with adults. I can also do this with students. And I will say, okay, find your text in the slide deck. So one of these slides would be, we're presuming here, like this would be what you're looking at. And then right below it would be something like this, where it's like, okay, this is your group's title, this is your text that you're looking at, and here's 2 prompts. So you're going to share your ideas. You're going to just write them in there so we can all visually see, and I can kind of assess as the teacher. I can look in and see you're making sure you're working. And you also have a visual to share out when you're sharing out with a larger group. I like to put in some notes here like, oh, there might be a notes section tip, so check there. Or when you've finished, make sure you jot your ideas on that slide and put them under the prompts listed. I also like to remind folks that you're going to have to share out with the larger group. You will have this visual slide to help you, but make sure you name someone and you decide as a group who that person that will be your spokesperson is going to be for the group. So they're ready when they kind of come back together. So these are my favorite strategies. So again, that's Stop and Jot, Notice and Wonder, and Jigsaw for your reading supports. Always feel free to use these. Use them, personalize them, use them with your staff, help teachers use them and create their own resource banks, and just credit me when you can.